So last week we remembered the story of Jacob, who encountered God 2 times, both times in the dark of night in the desert. The first time, Jacob had a dream with a ladder going all the way to heaven, with angels ascending and descending the ladder. And God spoke to Jacob and told him that God would be with him, and that God would bring him back to this place even as Jacob was running from home. The second encounter happened as Jacob was returning home to see his brother Esau, whom he had cheated for the first time in 2 decades. On the night before they met, Jacob encountered God a second time in the wilderness. An angel came and wrestled with Jacob all night long. But Jacob realized it was the very presence of God. So this time he demanded a blessing. And God gave it to him in the form of a name. He would now be called Israel because he had struggled with God and overcome. But he was also given a limp, a physical reminder of that struggle that he would feel every single day for the rest of his life. Jacob went on and reunited and reconciled with his brother, and he eventually settles down in Bethel, that very place where he had his dream and where God told him he would one day return. Jacob had 12 sons and a daughter. But there was one son who he loved more than the other children, and that was Joseph, the second youngest son, the son of his favorite wife, Rachel. And today we're going to hear Joseph's story. Joseph woke up after a bad night of sleep. It wasn't a dream, unfortunately. He was indeed in prison. It was dark. It smelled. He felt the chains around his body weighing him down. Someone nearby was snoring. At least they could sleep in this place, although he didn't know how. And since he couldn't sleep, Jacob laid there and remembered his days of innocence back to his childhood. He remembered his father, Jacob, also known as Israel. He remembered his siblings, 11 brothers and a sister. He remembered how he had a very special place in his father's heart. After all, his mother Rachel was his dad's favorite wife, and she had died in childbirth with his younger brother. Jacob had always shown Joseph some extra love, and his brothers did not like knowing that he was the clear favorite. He remembered a special day many years ago when his father had come to him with a gift. It was a special robe. It was beautiful and ornate, and Joseph loved to put it on. But when he wore it, his brothers always acted a little funny, like they were jealous. And their relationship had only gotten worse when he began to tell them about the vivid dreams that he had. "Listen to this dream I had," he told them. "We were all out in the field gathering bundles of wheat, and all of a sudden my bundle stood straight up, and your bundle circled around me and bowed down to my bundle." His brother said, "So what? You're going to boss us around?" And they hated him even more because of his dreams and the way that he talked. And soon after, he had had another dream. "I dreamed another dream," he told his brothers. "The sun and the moon and 11 stars bowed down to me." Even his father reprimanded him on that day. But God was with Joseph. For as long as he could remember, Joseph had been a dreamer. He knew that those dreams meant something. He dreamed of becoming a great person. He held those dreams and visions close to his heart. And sure, Joseph could understand why his brothers didn't like his dreams. And he knew that they had never received such a beautiful coat or the special attention he always seemed to get. Perhaps his ego was a little inflated, but he is a teenager after all. But it still doesn't excuse what they did to him. because when he was 17, his brothers had been off tending the flocks, and Jacob sent Joseph to check on them. Joseph knows that they saw him coming. He had been waving to them as he approached. But when he got to them, there was no warm greeting. They ripped off his precious coat from his father. Then they grabbed him and threw him in the dry cistern. It was dark and cold in there, and Joseph remembered how afraid he had been. A feeling that might have felt familiar as he now laid in his prison cell. But this was a joke, right? They would pull him out any time now, and they would all have a good laugh. That's what brothers do. But then he heard camels, and he smelled some spices and perfumes wafting in, and voices, but not familiar ones, talking to his brothers. Someone had stopped by, but he couldn't make out what they were saying. And before he knew it, he was pulled out of the cistern and thrown out to the strangers. He had been sold for 20 pieces of silver. Joseph was now a slave on his way to Egypt. And when he got to Egypt, he was sold to an Egyptian man named Potiphar. Joseph remembered that day, miles away from his family, so very far from those dreams of greatness. He was sad, lonely, hurt, a little resentful. How could you not be? But God was with Joseph, and he did not give up. As Joseph worked among strangers in Potiphar's house, he was diligent and faithful. He did every task that was asked of him, and he did it well. Soon enough, because of his honesty and hard work, Joseph became a supervisor in Potiphar's house, and things began to feel like maybe they would work out. Maybe this was the life God had for him. Maybe this is what it would mean to be great. But all of this was shattered in a single day. Potiphar's wife had always liked Joseph. Perhaps she liked him a little too much. One day, when Potiphar was out of the house, his wife tried to get Joseph to betray Potiphar and sleep with her. But Joseph would not do anything that would displease God or betray Potiphar, so he ran from Potiphar's wife. But as he turned to leave, she reached out and grabbed the cloak, pulling it off of him. Joseph was really good at losing cloaks, apparently. And when Potiphar got home, his angry wife told a big lie to her husband. She accused Joseph of doing the very thing that he refused to do. And even though Potiphar liked Joseph, he didn't listen to Joseph's side of the story. Maybe because the evidence, the coat, was left behind. Maybe because Joseph was a foreign slave who did not have much power. Maybe he just wanted peace in his home. And so Potiphar threw Joseph into prison, the very prison that Joseph had woken up in that morning. But as he laid there in his cell, Joseph remembered that, once again, God was with him, even in this prison. Even though Joseph was a foreigner away from home who had been treated unfairly, he did not give up. God showed Joseph kindness and had given him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. Joseph worked hard and was honest and treated everyone kindly, and the warden even put Joseph in charge of everyone in the prison. And so God was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. God is with Joseph even as a slave in a foreign land. God is with Joseph even in his temptation and the aftermath. And God is with Joseph even in his imprisonment. God is with Joseph as a slave in a strange land. He was hated by his brothers. He was 17 when he was sold into slavery and separated from his family, separated from the father who loved him, separated from the only home in life that he knew. He will spend 13 years as a slave to Potiphar and as a prisoner in his cell. And even in these abysmal circumstances, God is with Joseph. Joseph's career, if you will, as a slave in Potiphar's house is very successful. Even when he starts as a menial slave, God prospered Joseph. When Potiphar realizes that Joseph does good work, he moves him into the house. And then Potiphar notes that God is with Joseph and promotes him to be his assistant who is in charge of the whole household. God blesses Potiphar's estate under Joseph's hand. So then Joseph is put in charge of everything. He shows integrity and hard work and gets promoted to the highest position in the household. His trustworthiness is seen by all, and his success and testimony is such that his master knows it is because the Lord is with Joseph. God is with Joseph when he's alone and homesick. God is with Joseph when he laid awake at night, wondering why life was unfair. When he dreamed about his old life. When he wondered if his family even remembered him or what had happened to him since he came to Egypt. When days were good and he was successful and seen for who he was, God is with Joseph. As he prospers and grows in these unforeseen circumstances, even as a slave, God is with Joseph. And God is with Joseph through the temptation and the aftermath, because trouble is brewing in Potiphar's house. Success always seems to open up new temptations, and Joseph's success and his good looks create a real problem for him and Potiphar's wife. She takes notice of him, and there's not a subtle bone in her body. She is forward and aggressive and persistent in her pursuit, and I'm sure this was a temptation of some sort, because who was he to deny her? But Joseph is a man of integrity and refuses her advances out of love for God and love for his neighbor. He had integrity in the small things, which led to his advancement in Potiphar's home, and now Joseph had integrity in the big things, proving that he could be trusted with all in his care. God is with Joseph, and Joseph knew that even here, alone with Potiphar's wife in her home, God was with him still. God is with him as he refuses and flees his coat taken from him a second time. God is with him as a humiliated and scornful woman begins to weave a false tale at his expense. She frames Joseph. He's not killed, but thrown in prison. God is with Joseph, even in the aftermath. And this story seems so unfair. Joseph is once again here because of something that was not his fault. But righteous living does not always bring about an easy life. Often it can bring about the opposite. And God is still with Joseph, even in his imprisonment. God was with Joseph every bit as much in the prison as God was in Potiphar's house. And once again, Joseph is granted favor by his master, the prison warden this time. Once again, God prospers Joseph and makes him successful. God does not leave Joseph in the prison to die. God continued to put Joseph in the right place at the right time with the right people. God is with him as Joseph interprets a dream for the employees of the Pharaoh. And a couple years later, when no one else can interpret the Pharaoh's dream, Joseph can and does. Joseph is once again promoted, this time to oversee all the land of Egypt at the age of 30. God is present when Joseph is suffering just as much as when Joseph is peacefully prospering. God is weaving all these things together, the dreams and the disappointments and the favor and the betrayals. There is a promise that God is with us no matter what. When we're successful, when we're suffering, when we feel alone and homesick, when we're scared about what is next in life, when life is unfair, when we're frustrated and confused, God is with us. God is with you. And I think that Joseph's story and encounter with God offers us an invitation as well. We can navigate life's major changes with grace and trust in God's purposes. Joseph's faithfulness reminds us that no matter our circumstances, our encounter with God has forever changed who we are. You can choose to remain faithful when you're betrayed. You can choose integrity when lies surround you. And you can choose to extend kindness when you receive cruelty. You can still be the person that God has created you to be in the midst of difficult times. You can trust that these life changes and transitions will not reduce who you are. They will be a tool for your growth. God is present and working through every stage of our lives, even when you wonder what God could possibly be doing here. So when you lose your coat of many colors, may you remember it is not what defines you. And when you find yourself unexpectedly in a dark cistern, may you trust that you will not remain there. When you are sold into slavery, may you work with dignity and integrity. When you are falsely accused, may you stand firm in truth. And when you feel imprisoned, may you know that is not the end of your story. Because what others meant for harm, God will use for good. The plan will bring forth provision, not just for you, but for many. Your story with God is far greater than you can imagine. As you encounter God, may you know that God sees you even in the darkness. God remembers you even when you feel alone and forgotten. God is with you even in the waiting. Amen.